Hi everyone, welcome to The Writer's Edge. I'm your host, Christy Stratus, and tonight we have a very special show for you. I'm really excited about it. Tonight's episode has been kindly sponsored by Creative Edge. So first let me tell you a little bit about them. I think it's really cool that our names actually match, so it's kind of meant to be. And then after that, our authors are going to introduce themselves as usual. So first let me tell you about them. Creative Edge specializes in elevating the public profile of authors and artists, both self-published and traditional, through the following means, but there's also other stuff that they do. So they do signings, presentations, and the presentations can be in libraries, schools, conferences, businesses, and other places. They also have involvement in applicable events, depending on what you're doing, your genre, stuff like that. Media interviews, and those include print and television, radio, selected podcasts, and they do soliciting of reviews from influential reviewers and bloggers. Creative Edge has collaborations with a number of literary organizations, and that includes Alexandra Writers Center Society. Creative Edge has been or is a corporate sponsor for both When Worlds Collide and Youth Write. And in addition, Creative Edge has direct relationships with a number of independent bookstores and chains, and that includes Audrey's Books, Owl's Nest Books, Chapters/Indigo. So thank you so much to Creative Edge for sponsoring this video. Tonight we're going to talk about a number of topics revolving around mostly event planning and publicity. And as always, even though we have set topics, please leave your questions in the chat and I will do my best to get them answered. If we don't have time, I will definitely leave them down below in the comments section for our awesome panelists to answer afterwards. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the bell to get notifications when we go live and when we post a new video. So now I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves, and then I will also introduce myself. So let's get started with Adam Dries.
Hi, I'm Adam Dries. I'm a young adult author. I've written a steampunk meets fairy tale series called The Yellow Hoods, a post-apocalyptic fantasy high action wizard killer, and a sci-fi novel called The Man of Cloud 9. I've been independently publishing my work since 2014 and connected up with Creative Edge just under a year ago. Gary?
Okay. Hi, I'm G.W. Renshaw, and at the moment I'm writing a series of paranormal mystery/thrillers called The Chandler Affairs, which is about a young lady who becomes a private investigator in the far-off and mystical land of Calgary, and her cases turn out to be weirder than she could have ever imagined. And I've been with Creative Edge for, well, since the beginning, so a bit over a year.
Great, thank you guys so much. And next we'll do Anna.
Sorry, hi there. Yeah. I am a romance author. I actually live in Toronto. I've been writing for a few years, but I just had my first book published a year ago, and I'm writing a series. The series is a biker romance. So there are 7 in the series, and every single one of them is its own book, but I'm creating almost like an entire city revolving around the characters.
That's awesome. That sounds really different too. And last but not least, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Johnson, and I am a novelist and short story writer. My first book is a short story collection called Suicide Stitch. I call them love stories, but none of them are pretty. I have a science fiction fantasy novel called Infractus coming out in October, and I am also the events manager at Owl's Nest Books.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. And we may have someone joining us a little bit later. We'll see if she is able to make it. And I'm your host, Christy Stratus. I'm the author of Anatomy of a Darkened Heart, dark psychological historical fiction. That is the first in the Dark Victoriana collection. There will be another book out this year. It will be at the end of this month, which is next week, or in the beginning of next month. So I'm really excited for that. And as course, you know, I have my own YouTube channel and I do The Writer's Edge. So thank you so much to the panelists for being here. I'm really excited about this. I know a lot of people are, and I want to start out with a general question for each of you. And that is, what caused you to look for an event planner in the first place? So you guys can go ahead and answer whenever you want.
Actually, I believe Susie just joined. Maybe.
Yeah, sorry guys. It always happens at the worst times, right? I got a blue screen on my computer, decided to update. So sorry I'm late.
Of course. Thanks, Susie. Oh, I'm so glad you could make it. So introduce yourself. Go ahead and tell us what you've written, what genre.
Absolutely. So I'm a young adult romance author. So far, I have one book out in my Fountain series. It is called The Fountain. And the second book is called The West Woods, and it comes out in September. So
great, we have that to look forward to. So the question that I just asked was, what caused you to look for an event planner to begin with? So let
perfect.
us know. Yeah, anyone can start. Just jump right in.
Oh, maybe I will, because I met Mickey first before he was even sort of decided he was going to start Creative Edge. He had an author at Owl's Nest Books, and he and I were just talking, and he was just so happy with the experience he'd had working with me. He just said, you know, if there's anything I can ever do to help you out. And I kind of just took him at his word and said, actually, this is great, because I am an author too. I have a book coming out. I'm really busy planning events for the store. I don't have time to do it for myself. And so he just hopped right on it. And within a couple of weeks, I had a few signings lined up, some interviews, and it went pretty well. And so he decided that he wanted to do more of this, and he wanted to meet more writers and work with more writers.
Yes, and thank you for that, Sarah. Thank you for inspiring Mickey, because I met him shortly after that and was chatting with him about something similar, just not having the bandwidth. You know, I work full time, I have 3 kids, and I'm making a go of this author thing, and it's awesome and fun, but it's a lot of work. And so talking about just having a set of extra hands and having the bandwidth and talking about some of my ideas, and he was able to make those happen. So that was really exciting.
And I think one of the other parts of it was, you know, it's easy enough for some folks, I'm one of them, to be able to get your book signings locally. But when you want to kind of expand out, you don't necessarily have those connections. To be able to delegate to somebody and say, hey, listen, you know, I want to go to this nearby city. I want to go here. Can you find out what's available? And we just did this last week, and I sat down with Mickey and I said, hey, listen, you know, here's a bunch of cities that I think I can attack. I need a sounding board to really help me narrow down what makes the most amount of sense, right? And then for that person to be able to also then take that plan, run with it, and say, okay, you know, I'll get back to you by this point. Now I can focus on finishing, you know, my latest book just before school ran out with 3 kids. And I think what it is it's that essential extension of what you can do. Some of us are perfectly comfortable to pick up the phone, right, and call around. And then maybe it's a question of time. Other folks aren't comfortable doing those kind of calls. So it's great to have, I think, somebody take all of that on.
Yeah. Yeah, I met Mickey at a When Words Collide meeting where he was volunteering to do whatever needed doing to get the festival going. And I spoke to him afterward and said, so what do you do? And he said, oh, I'm a book publicist and we need to talk. Because it is a huge drain on an author's time and energy to try to do all of this marketing stuff yourself. Whereas I said, oh, my wife and I are going up to Edmonton to go to a fan convention. And he said, oh, great. Is it on a weekend? Yeah. Okay. How would you like to do some signings? And he just, you know, booked 3 signings for me, and, you know, to fill in the bits around the edge of the
I think he sent everyone on that like boot camp Edmonton signing trip. It's like best.
I've resisted so far, but I'd like to go.
Yeah.
Funny, because I met Mick first, and we actually had conversations about where I wanted to go and my dedication to what I wanted to do. And I think the right thing for me was when I could actually focus on the writing. And I didn't have to focus on the rest, because I don't like the rest. I mean, it's not safe. And so it's great that you have a champion in your corner that can turn around and make those other things happen so I can focus on the stuff I love doing.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a theme with everyone. And I think most writers feel that way, that the marketing really drags down the writing time because it is very time consuming, like all of you have said. And, you know, Gary, actually, that sounds like a dream. Like somebody, you know, you saying, oh, I'm going somewhere either on vacation or for whatever reason. And your event planner saying, oh, let me just book you these signings. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Wow.
Yeah, it worked out extremely well.
That's really cool. So I was going to ask, how did you find Creative Edge? What has your experience been? But I think that we have generally heard how you've met Mickey. And it's sounding like you have all had a pretty good experience from what I'm hearing, actually a really good experience. And honestly, like, I think of all the time that I would spend trying to do that. I could totally understand how this would save so much time. Adam, you in particular, I've seen you writing like nonfiction and fiction and fiction and fiction. And it's just like, I don't know how you get it done. So,
well, you know, it's one of those things of when I first met Mickey, he said, I don't know what I can do for you, right? Like, you seem to do everything. And I said, sit down, we need to talk, right? Because this is about scale. You know, I also do a lot of, well, I do all my online marketing and whatnot myself and try to squeeze every single minute I can out of the stuff. But, you know, you've got to be able to find, like, if you think of it from an entrepreneur point of view, if you treat yourself like your own, you know, your own startup company, your own Facebook in the early days, right? You've got to be able to find functions that you delegate off. Like, I cannot be my own editor for love or money, right? I can provide comments to somebody else, but, you know, particularly as a dyslexic writer, I know people's eyes bleed when they read my stuff pre-edited. So, you know, I had to find a right team member for that. Finding somebody who can take on these responsibilities, I think, is also part of your growth as an author. And it does let you then focus on the areas that you provide the most amount of value, which is connecting directly with people and, you know, writing.
That's really fantastic. And it's a really good point. Did I hear, Sarah, did you say that you own a bookstore? Did I get that right?
No, I don't own a bookstore. I'm poor enough being a writer. This is live, shoot. No, I'm the events manager at a bookstore. So all the things that Mickey's sending us out to do, signings and events at other places, I'm coordinating and managing in our bookstore.
That I could imagine that helping, you know, to some degree, your understanding of what it takes.
It is, but it's like that saying, like, the cobbler's children always go barefoot. I put my heart and my soul into my work, and then when it comes to promoting my own stuff, I'm just like, Mickey, I don't have it. I don't know how to talk about my own work. And that's the other thing is Mickey is great about sort of being a sounding board and helping you learn about how to talk about your own work, because there is a learning curve to it, and being able to summarize your book and being able to pitch your book and being able to read people as they're entering a store, how to approach them. So he's been an invaluable resource in that way.
That's great to hear. And you need that kind of like expert in your corner that you know you can trust and you don't have to worry about. That kind of leads into another question I have, which is, have you tried other publicists or publicity companies or even event planners before Creative Edge? And if you did, what made you switch?
Yeah, I have. I'm not sure if anybody else, hopefully there are some other views here. So I had a publicist prior to Mickey. And I was on maybe 2 podcasts over the span of a year. They weren't able to connect with any kind of media or whatnot. I also had worked with an online publicity company doing, you know, Facebook takeover events and that kind of thing, which I found both having them done for me and participating in other ones really didn't drive interest in readers and traffic. So in both cases, you know, it hadn't worked out. And one of the things that, you know, I've learned from that is you really should trust your gut. You should start being able to get some kind of feel, is this person doing effort? Because you need to know, is it you, is it your books, is it your genre, or is it the fact that the other person either can't connect or isn't doing the work? So you've got to be able to figure that out and tweak things. I'm not sure, anybody else had a...
Yeah, I haven't worked with a publicist within the book industry, but I've certainly worked with tons of PR companies for my day job. And Mickey is unique in that, and it keeps coming up. I hear that people are saying he's a sounding board. He can discuss it. He's not afraid to try something new. And I've got lots and lots of ideas. And there's lots of people on this call that are very entrepreneurial with their books and their author career, and come up with all kinds of things. And he's definitely willing to try anything. And I haven't experienced that before with any other PR company. As Adam said, you pay a retainer and you might get one or two things in the beginning. And then after 6 months, you go, oh, wait a minute, I'm still paying that retainer and I didn't get anything out of it. It's time to end the relationship. And that's been my experience with dozens, like literally dozens of PR companies trying to get the word out, not around books, but around other things. With Mickey, he really goes above and beyond to find out what your goals are. He's not afraid to change his services or to sort of do whatever it is that you had in mind, and try new things and pass that along to all the other authors. So that's been really cool. And as well, I think that it really helps, and I heard a couple of people allude to this earlier as well, but it really helps, like if you say, hey, I really want to go to this conference, and you have your publicist calling, it gives you instant credibility. Whereas sometimes I find anyway, when you're calling as a small press author or an indie author and they've never heard of you, you maybe don't get a phone call back. And so that's been really helpful for me, because you can get to the chase really quickly and find out, like, can I appear at this event or can I not appear at this event? And you can kind of find out and schedule it or move on. And so that's been really helpful for me too. Anyone else in terms of other PR companies or publicity in books?
I actually haven't did one before, but the reason that I went with Mickey is not because of the fact I got a gut feeling, and I always go with my gut. I talked to him. He was real. He made sense. We had good conversation. I felt like I mattered. And when you are already writing and have a full-time job and you have a family and everything else going on around you, the one thing that you want, that ability to know that you have someone in your corner. And I really do feel that with him, which is why I kind of went that way. And I'm all the way out in Toronto. So it's not that we're close by. If that phone call didn't happen every so often, I mean, it's easy to get lost. But he gets just as excited about our projects and our books as we do, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really
definitely.
His
and it's not an author has people making them feel like they matter.
Yeah.
This is a really, really tough business, as we all know. It is the business of no. It is the business of please go away. And so having someone like pulling for you, it makes all the difference.
And I think one of the big things that I think allows someone like Mickey to be successful is when you have authors who are not passively waiting for the publicist to do everything, because it's a marketing exercise, right? It doesn't mean that all because you were in the newspaper or all because you were on this podcast that suddenly, you're going to sell, thousands of books, right? Or tens of thousands of books, right? What it is to understand, like, that person has to work, one, from you, and two, what you're doing is trying to build momentum, right? My wife found out that I'm the mini celebrity on the street because people had seen me in the newspaper and saw me on TV, and they were chatting when my wife came along, which was really funny. But it's an example of, momentum, like on the smallest scale. But I've seen people try to hire a publicist and, spending a ridiculous amount of money and then expecting that person to just know what to do. And the thing is, they're a member of your team. And so, before anybody should take that kind of action of kind of bringing something like that on board, are you willing to go and do book signings? What are you willing to do to get yourself out there in terms of reach? Is it that you physically can't move, so it's really going to be your voice that's got to travel? So that means podcasts, audio, visual, and radio, and that kind of thing. So you need to have at least a base idea. And then hopefully with that publicist, you're able to get some kind of chemistry, that them proposing ideas that inspires you, and then they're going to make you commit. And then for some people, that's a really point of high anxiety, right? Is the actual, okay, now I've said I could do it. They've done all the legwork. I have to go do it. So you got to stay to your word, stay true to your word, I should say.
Yeah, an awful lot of writers seem to be very introverted. And I tell people I'm not actually an extrovert, but I've played one at signings. And I really had no idea what I was supposed to do at signings. And so Mickey said, okay, well, I'll show up for your next one. And he sat with me for all 4 hours and said, okay, that person who just came in, what you should have done was, and then I tried that with the next person and it worked a little better. And okay, when that person does that, it means they're not going to be interested. You should, just say, thank you, have a nice day, and move on. And that was incredibly helpful to me, because by the end of it, I felt like I at least had a basic knowledge of how to sell books.
And now you sell a lot, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing everybody saying is, I think when you're looking for a publicist, you need to be really vocal about what it is that you need, because I think everybody on this call is using publicity services for something different, whether it's booking events, booking signings, online, getting on, getting media, that type of thing is all completely different. And so, you got to find somebody that's willing to do what it is that you need, and you have to have some idea of what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And they can get you the gig, but you have to, show up and do the work. It's got to
fit you. Yeah. It's got to fit you.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. And it's, I think that's especially useful for first-time authors. A lot of times I think that we expect that we will do like a Facebook event or something, and we get really excited about it. And then, like Adam said before, there's really not much that comes out of it necessarily. But, you also think that maybe you do like one event and it should really, do something immediately. But again, as Adam said before, it is a matter of building all of that stuff up for sure. And I really like the idea that you have to be, as the writer, creative and vocal about it. That's really interesting, because I think that the expectation would probably be from people who haven't used a publicist before to just wait for the publicists, So that's really great advice. I do have a couple of questions in the chat that I'd like to bring up. J.D. Estrada asks, how does compensation normally work? I would gladly do all the events, but everything I've done has been doing it by myself. So I guess, is there some kind of package that you do, or how does that work? Do you say, I want to do a number of in-person events and that's one thing, or I want to do a lot of online, or how does that exactly work? Do you know?
Go ahead.
All right. Well, one thing I can tell you, just comparing a couple of the different ones I've worked with, there are some that have like an a la carte menu where you kind of pay for locked-in events or gigs or interviews. You have other ones that are kind of a monthly rate where they'll book X number for you. And there are some that have kind of, hey, if you want me to book you for 30, sure, but you're basically paying for them full time, right? Or like a large chunk of their time, like 40 to 80 hours of the month. Someone else?
Yeah, I would concur, Adam. I think different firms do different things, and I think at Creative Edge, I bet every one of us we talk probably has a slightly different arrangement, because, like I said, we're all looking for different things out of it. So it really depends on what you want to do. But some charge a stipend that's on a regular basis, and others charge per booking. I tend to like the ones that charge per booking, because I don't want to be paying for somebody doing nothing. And like I said, it's been my experience in my day job that a PR firm, sometimes if you're not watching and you're paying this monthly stipend, it can be months go by and all of a sudden they're not doing anything for you anymore. So I like the publicist to be held accountable for sure.
Yeah. Mickey is a bit like a sushi restaurant, a good sushi restaurant, in that I'll get emails from him saying, there's this opportunity, somebody or another wants writers on the podcast or something like that, who's interested. And then you pay for what you eat.
That sounds really reasonable, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
Who have you eaten, Gary?
Sorry?
Who have you eaten?
Is this admissible as evidence?
Sarah, I keep wanting to offer you my glass of water.
We do have another question also from the chat. This is from Joe Compton from Go Indie Now. And he asks, does the service offer a guarantee, and how much territory area does the service cover?
Well, I think.
What do you mean by guarantee?
Because of what Adam was saying, that and a few other people, that you really have to know what you want your publicist to do for you and how much work you're willing to put in. You can't really give a guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, is it guarantee of sales or?
Well, yeah. So in terms of like, one thing I've heard somebody ask before over coffee where I was talking about this subject was they were saying, well, you know, when he puts my press release out, how many, you know, papers am I guaranteed for it to be picked up in? And the answer is 0, right? It's like, you know, is this person doing the effort? You know, you can see the emails, you can, you know, double check if you want in terms of interaction going out there, but that, you know, the publicist doesn't have control over what the newspaper or radio station or TV station decides to do. And in terms of guarantees from a sales point of view, yeah, I haven't found one that'll go anywhere near that, because that's not their realm. They're not selling. What they're doing is increasing the way I like to think of it is they're boosting your signal, right? If you're you know, little ham radio, right? What they're doing is they're amplifying what you're doing and helping people, you know, hear about you the first time, the second time, the third time. Then when they walk into that store or they're online and that ad pops up and they see you, they go, in back of their mind, it's like, yeah, that's familiar, right? And then they click, or then they investigate, or then they listen, right? And then that brings them in as a potential reader. They're not going to really evaluate what you've got before them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, I think it depends on what your benchmark is. If you're saying, can you guarantee me 3 signings a month? That might be something that you can talk about. But then when you get to that signing, you got to sell the books, right? Unless you're Gary and then you make Mickey come help you sell them too. No, just kidding, Gary.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, that it's more about, you know, getting the word out there than necessarily having a guarantee. I mean, how can they guarantee? So that does make a lot of sense to me. So what about then the territory that they cover? I know it's in Canada, but does he also cover the US?
Yes, he does.
Oh, okay.
He does have some authors in the US as well. But I think it's more on the connection that you have with one another and what it is that you want to get out of it. And I think that, again, that's a kind of thing in the relationship that you choose and what it is that you need to get out of it. So you're never going to have, like, I mean, you could find someone down the street that's great for you, or like me, I'm across and I still have Mickey as my publicist because I think it works, and it works well right now. And that's really what matters.
So some people have different publicists in different countries. In Mickey's case, I've watched or I think we've all watched his influence go from Canada to the US to also include the UK and Australia, because I was just talking with Mickey about that this past weekend. So some will specialize in areas. Everybody, I think, is going to have areas where they have greater influence and other areas that are less so, or they might have very particular relationships. So maybe there's a horror podcast out of Australia that he, for one reason or another, he ends up having a fantastic relationship with. Well, then it's going to depend on genre, which I think brings up another point. Some of the publicists that I've spoken to will specialize either in genre or by geography. Mickey's one of those cases of, he's really, I think, just between looking at us on this panel, I think we really do cover the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. I was thinking that. What a nice variety of genres we have here, which is really great. And that says a lot about him, too.
Mm-hmm. A nice thing about Mickey is that he is fearless. And so if he doesn't have contacts in an area and you need contacts in that area, he will try to find some. I told him that I had some fans in Finland, and he said, "Are you planning to go there? Because I can find you contacts to do, you know, signings and whatever while you're there."
But, you know, bringing this back, if somebody was looking for a publicist, these are great questions to ask, right? Do you have genres of that are your specialty? Are you better in print or TV or online? And is your online more like bloggers or podcasters? You know, what's your rate structure? Or do you have multiple different structures? Do you have the bento box, or are you paying by the sushi? Mm-hmm. So I think what we're able to do in these questions, which have been great so far, is really almost build somebody up that kind of list of what should you be asking.
Well, and you know, decide what your budget is and find a publicist that can work within that for what you need, right?
Yeah.
Because they're all going to be different depending on how much service you expect and how much you're willing to do yourself.
Yeah, this is all great. And that was a great list, by the way, Adam, because that was going to be one of my questions, what you should be looking for or asking if you come across a publicist or an event planner that you're interested in. So that was a really good list that I'm sure a lot of people could use. So I appreciate that.
I would say references too. I would say that, you know, I look at this panel that we put together tonight, and all of these people, I mean, Creative Edge might be, it is different in that we interact with one another, and the way that we interact has been really cool, because, you know, we have an online group, we could share things within, and you kind of have a bit of a trust factor because you all share the same publicist. So we've actually really been able to work together in a neat way. And I don't know, I think that's, well, I'm sure that's quite unique, but ask for references and find out, you know, what has that publicist done for other people. Sure.
I'm going to jump in on what Susie said about being part of Creative Edge has brought a lot of writers into a community that they weren't a part of before. And as a writer, if you want support and you want your career to be on an upward trajectory, you're going to need people around you. And it is such an integrally important thing to be part of a writing community, whether it's locally, whether it's online, but that network, it will be crucial to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are really good points as well. It's just like, you know, hiring an employee just the same way. I know somebody said that earlier, you know, you're working together, they're also working for you in a way, and, you know, but you are working together. So it makes sense to ask for references, of course, but, you know, honestly, I wouldn't have thought to do that before. So that's really good advice. I have a couple more questions here, and one of them, actually a couple of them are from Joe, and he was specifying that before, when he asked his question, he was not saying sales, he was saying most publicists list who they work with. So he was wondering if Creative Edge has a list of things it promises it will do for you. To me, it sounds like you're saying to, you know, Mickey, this is what I'm looking to do, this is what I'm looking to accomplish, and he helps you based on that. That's pretty accurate, or would you say?
I think there's two different things. I would say that that's very accurate, and everybody has their own sort of wish list that they're working on with Mickey, and you tell him, you know, what your priorities are and when you need them by, and then he sees if he can fit it all in. But then he also works on getting relationships, and when he does get a relationship, he often negotiates like a podcast that would accept any Creative Edge author, and that's what his goal is. And so we might get something that says, hey, I've lined up this podcast, let me know if you're interested, and you're in. So some things are very specific and tailored to what it is that you're trying to accomplish, but other things that he's doing for Creative Edge, as soon as he gets a new contact, he shares it with all of us, or he shares it with who it's relevant for. You know, if he finds somebody in young adult, you might not be offering it to everybody. You might only be offering it to his young adult authors. But yeah, that's what he does. And as soon as he gets a new relationship, then that's shared amongst the team, and you can opt in or opt out.
There's also a contract involved. Like when you do decide you want to work with Mickey, you will have a contract that will say, this is what I will do, this is what I won't do, this is what you will do. And, you know, so there is, you know, sort of a written description of services provided.
And one of the things, this kind of goes to the cobbler reference from Sarah earlier, and having just helped Mickey sketch out the details for the Creative Edge website, because he's been so busy with all of us and the other parts of his life that he hasn't actually got around to putting that up. But one of the things that are going to go on there, which comes right out of the contract really, is here's the kind of things that he could do for you, right? And then it's from there that you kind of have a base plan. So it's not like you're sitting down with somebody and they're going, what would you want to do? And you're like, I have no clue within the realm of possibilities, right? But instead, it's like, look, here's normally what are the kind of things that I do. And Susie was listening to a couple of those and Sarah before. So when you're talking with any kind of publicist, you should be able to get a good idea of what they do. What are they flexible to do? Like, meaning like they do these either on a special occasion, or they just don't advertise this all the time, but they do it. And there might be areas that they just don't do, right? I've run into one before who didn't do press releases for some reason. So like they wouldn't write it. Like if you wrote it and distributed it, then they would follow up, but they wouldn't do it themselves for whatever reason. So it's good to know, what do they do? What do they not do? What are their strengths, right?
Wow, I've never heard of somebody who refused to do press releases, so that's very interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. It is sort of just like, again, I'm hearing like it's sort of like interviewing if you were, you know, a business, treating it like a business, like you said before, and interviewing someone who might work for you. Exactly. That's a really good way to think of it, instead of thinking, we always think of ourselves as like, oh, I'm an author, I have to take what I can get a little bit, you know, to some degree, especially if you're new. It can be really hard to think of yourself as you're working for me, you know? That's great advice.
I was one of those people who didn't know what I didn't know. So I had no clue what I needed to do. So when all these things came up, he says, well, do you want this, or do you want this, and do you want this? And I'm like, yes, 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 because I had no idea what it was that I needed to do. I was brand new, and all I wanted to do was write. And then they were telling me I had to go and do book signings, and I'm looking at them like a deer in headlights. I didn't know where, I didn't know why, I didn't know what questions to ask, I didn't know how to approach anybody. And it was, as it is, I was going through my own anxiety about just getting comfortable with all of this. It's nice to know that there's someone there who had more idea of at least how to slowly dip me into the water, and now I feel a lot more comfortable doing other things that I didn't think I would be doing.
That's really great. It sounds like he's really sensitive to your needs and paying attention to you as a person and an author, both. That's really great to hear. I do have another question from the audience, and that is from Joe. Does Mickey do seasons? Is it certain times of year that are more fruitful than others, or is he pretty good at covering things year round?
Year round.
Yeah.
Year round. I haven't quite been with Mickey a year, so maybe not, but
it's always, there's an ebb and flow to it. When you have a book just out, you're going to be doing a lot. You're going to be, you know, making hay while the iron is hot, or that's no. Anyway, you're going to be doing a lot of stuff. Once your book's been out for 6 months, you're not going to be doing so much. And I mean, that's just the nature of the business. And besides, you'd burn out if you were doing, you know, tons of things all the time. You'd never have time to write.
Yeah. And, you know, extending off of that, you know, you can kind of think of it as a cycle. You've got the pre-launch stuff, right? So building some excitement. And if you've got any backlist, right, you kind of throwing some light on that. And then you got, as Sarah was just saying, you've got that upper part where now this is the highlight of that book. And then, you know, from a publicity point of view, maybe you're doing more podcasts or interviews about craft, right? So those are going to be less frequent, but you're kind of still staying in the public eye. Maybe you're doing some guest blog posts, and then you're starting to ramp up relative to the next thing that you're doing to get to the next cycle, which is the way to think about it. Some people kind of expect like this straight line graph that just kind of goes up and consumes 100% of your time. And if you think about it, if you are everywhere, right? If somehow you manage to be absolutely everywhere, you're just going to saturate your potential audience, right? And then it's going to be like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to hear about that person anymore. Or the media who are connecting with you, it's like, okay, look, enough. We're tired of this person. We don't want to talk to them for a year or 2 years or never ever again.
So there is some amount of balance also that he's got to have. Okay. Yeah. We're getting some really great comments down here. And I do have another question from someone else. First of all, everyone is loving the making hay while the iron is hot. They're saying that's their new favorite.
Burning hay, maybe?
I meant make hay while the sun shines.
Everyone is loving that. And I want to just say that we have someone in the audience, Rebecca, who has said, just to echo what you guys have already said, I think one of the hardest things for authors to do is to see themselves and their work as a business. We understand we are working, but not that we're bosses of a business. And, you know, a lot of people are agreeing with that. So I have another question. This is from Courtney, and she says, is there a service Mickey provides that you feel is his specialty? Everything.
You know, I'm gonna, at least from my point of view, and this is not, you know, solely like a, you know, it's not like Mickey gave us all paychecks, right, to say this stuff. But one of the things I think that made it very clear is, apart from being adaptable, is growth, right? And so, like, I had a conversation with him. I've had a number of conversations where, you know, I said, you know what, I really think this would be an asset to do for the team across the board. And he'll think about it and he'll be like, not so sure. And then he'll go away and he'll process it and he'll come back. And the next thing I know, it's like, boom, here are three things already in that vein, right? Or it's like, you know, blog tours, I've got this connection. It's like, oh, I'm not really sure that would be of value to everybody. It's like, well, why don't you just talk with the person who does the blog tours? I've done a whole bunch of them. They were pretty much worthless, except for this one's person really seemed to work with me. Next thing, he's negotiated a kind of a bulk rate for any one of his clients and is pushing that online medium. So, you know, some publicists fail. So some of people of this ilk behave like they, you know, they've got it figured out and that's what they're going to do. I'd say for Mickey, I've watched it kind of go from the print side and the bookings locally to expand out to include the US and start to shift also to online, and realizing where what he's able to provide with Creative Edge is clearly differentiated from its competition.
Yeah, I think that's bang on, Adam. I think that growth and being able to adapt, because let's face it, the book industry is changing every single day. And so, you know, what worked 2 years ago or what worked a year ago when I signed on isn't what's working today. So let's try some new things. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, one of the, a friend of mine asked me for a recommendation for a publicist. And I said that one of the things that I really liked about Mickey was that he's very collegial. He doesn't just say, here's my product, take it or leave it. This is what I do. Too bad. And, you know, as Adam said, you go to him and you say, well, how about if we do this? And he'll think about it, and then he may turn that raw idea that you know, novice writer, I mean, we're not marketing experts, but occasionally we have ideas, and he'll turn that into something really viable.
Yeah, creativity, adaptability, these are the kinds of things I'm hearing, and it makes a lot of sense.
He's also very good at identifying where your strengths are. If you are amazing at signings, he'll be like, okay, we got to get you in more stores, doing more of that. If you give a wonderful interview and you're charismatic and funny, then he'll be like, okay, we got to get more of those. So he's, you know, it's not so much like there's one thing that he's really good at getting for people. It's that he's really good at sort of homing in on what you're really good at, and where you're, you know, sort of like getting a lot of momentum from a certain form of media. And yeah, he can identify that and work with that, and also help you where you're struggling. Like, signings are definitely not my strong suit. I just kind of get to the point where I'm trying to keep the look of I hate all people off my face. He's like, yeah, you gotta work on that.
Spot the horror writer in this lineup.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, sometimes you probably don't even know what your strength is, and maybe you try a bunch of things and he can help you identify that, which, you know, that sounds like a really good thing to me. I wouldn't even know what my strong suit is yet, so that sounds really great.
But I think you also, because you have a publicist, you get better feedback, not necessarily from Mickey. I mean, he can't be everywhere all at once, but if he's booked you at an event, I've done a few speaking events, and he always follows up and gets really frank feedback on how you've done. And that is super helpful, because you don't necessarily get that at the end of the day when they say thank you for coming. They don't say to you, you know, what they, you know, that feedback. good thing it's been positive, but yeah, you don't always hear that feedback loop. And so it's really nice to have that come back and then say, hey, what I liked about having Susie here today was X, Y, and Z. And that always comes back to me and to Mickey. And then we learn from that as a team. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are really fantastic points, and they're just more things that can help somebody look for, like bullet points almost, of what to look for in a really good publicist.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question from the chat. Thank you guys so much for your questions. This has really been awesome. It's from Peter. He says, from 1 to 100%, how important do you find marketing is in the success of your book? In this day and age, do you think a book could take off on word of mouth alone?
That's a form of marketing.
Yeah.
Totally.
So-
If you could get 1,000 people to talk about your book without doing anything else, then still marketing, right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, some people believe that they can just upload their book onto Amazon or Kobo and then magically it's just going to rock it, but that's not going to happen. If nobody knows about your book, they don't have a chance to evaluate it.
Yeah.
So everything is about reach, right? When you're engaging with people in social media as an author, right? Whether it's talking about craft or genre stuff, or hopefully not using like the spam cannon on Twitter and just lambasting everybody with buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, right? That's a bad idea. But if you realize that there's a lot of things you can do yourself, right? For example, newsletter swaps as one of those ones that came up for me about a year ago, right? As realizing, hey, I can do this inexpensively or for free. You start to realize the power of reach. And a publicist like Mickey is about, like we talked about before, amplifying that, right? Boost your signal. If your book has no signal, right? And you're not out there letting people know, the chances are infinitesimal that it's accidentally going to find the right person who is then going to think this is the best book in the world and happens to have an amazing reach, right? Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know that this is sort of in the traditional line, but even so, the book We Need to Talk About Kevin by Lionel Shriver, which became a major movie, originally no one would publish it. And she got it published through a very small publisher. And then it was all word of mouth in some small area of New York and in England, which is really interesting. And that was how it started taking off. So like you're saying, that boosting your signal, like these people talking about it, and it just growing and growing still counts, as marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's that guerrilla level of marketing, right? But it is absolutely vital. It's the same reason that a number of us go out to, we do conventions and school talks and those book signings and a library event and whatnot. It's so that people know you exist as an author and they have a chance to discover your book. And then, it's wonderful to be online and be tagged into a conversation that's been going on where somebody's like, hey, I'm looking for really awesome steampunk books. It's like, oh my God, have you read these by Andrey? These are fantastic. And like, you've got to get pulled in. It's like, wow, thanks. I don't even know you people. This is fantastic, right?
I also think that a book like We Need to Talk About Kevin doesn't lend itself well to mainstream forms of marketing and lends itself extraordinarily well to that type of guerrilla marketing that Adam was talking about. Like, it's a book, it's harrowing subject matter. And it really is the kind of spreads by whispers, like, oh, there's this book and it's so hard to read, but, I couldn't put it down and that kind of thing. So, I think it depends on the kind of book. And it also that kind of situation is also lightning in a bottle. It just got in the hands of the right person at the right time and took off. You can't expect that to happen to you.
You can't expect it, but you can help it if you're searching for that online version of word of mouth is really getting in the hands of the right influential book blogger. If you can send your book out to book bloggers who know your space, and that is something that Mickey's been doing with me, they will pick it up and they will review it. And if they love it, they will blog about it. And they've got huge reach. And so that's that sort of virtual online version of word of mouth. It's who are the people in your space you know, you should have some idea, but it sometimes gives you more credibility to approach them through a publicist. And he's also got relationships with some of them already. So that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah, these are great points. Thank you for those. It makes a lot of sense. Everything that you guys are saying is really adding up. And as someone who has also not used a publicist ever and does not do much event planning, I wanted to wait until my second book came out before I did that kind of stuff. This is extremely helpful to me, so I'm sure it's really helpful to everyone watching as well. I do have one more question before we wrap it up, and that is, I wanted to know, what has been your most successful author event so far? It could be anything at all, but just, I would love for each of you to tell us about your most successful event.
So for me, I'm all about the launch party. I've got, you know, a pretty strong community around me, and they're all smiling. You guys are all coming, right? So I've got another book launch coming out in September, but I like to throw a big party, and I know not everybody does that. If you have the community that will support and buy books, it's a really fun way to remind people of your presence. It's a really great way to network with everybody in your life that will support you. And yeah, I like doing that.
I would say the most special one for me was I was in Saskatoon for their expo last year, and it was I think my third year going for that one. And you know, from a sales point of view, everything was great, but what really blew me away is I got my first piece of fan art. This girl had come up to me. I remember her from the year before, and on my third book, there's a mechanical horse. And she gave me a My Little Pony rendition of that, really well done. And that, you know, that it's one thing for somebody to tell you, and it's a fantastic thing when they tell you how much they loved your book, but when they present you with a piece of themselves, that was just like, that's awesome, yeah. Right? And gone is ever any question of ever will I return, right? It's like, yes, absolutely, I shall return till the end of time. So,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, I like launch parties, especially when there's cake. But and the girls are nodding and smiling. But for me, the events that I really enjoy the most are the signings, because then I get to actually be face to face with either people who have come to get the latest book, which is amazing, or who say, so tell me more about this. Oh, that sounds interesting. And it's almost a disappointment when people are immediately sold. I had a woman at my last signing who wandered by, and I said, do you like mysteries? And she said, why, yes, tell me more. And I gave her the spiel, which is one sentence, and she just picked up all 4 books and said, okay, and wandered off. Now, yeah, I mean, that's great, but it was like, but I want to get to know you.
I think my most successful in-person one was my launch. I absolutely had a blast, and it was in my community, and everybody came, which was just so incredibly tremendous to have that support. But I get the most success online, and I think it has to do more with my genre. Romance is something that a lot of people are buying online. They want to download. And so I just think it really has more to do with the type of book that I write.
When I think of the most successful event, I don't really think of the event itself or sales. I think of a trip I took with 2 other clients, and I have to give a shout out to a couple other dark fantasy and horror authors, Rebecca Raymond and JJ Reichenbach. We went to Edmonton together, and we did signings together, and we camped, we got lost, we traumatized Rebecca's husband, and like, I wouldn't have become friends with these women if I hadn't gone on this trip, and it was so much fun. And it comes back to being a part of that community, and you really do become like family.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, as different as we all are, the broader Creative Edge community is just that much different again. And we're getting the benefit of each other's ideas, because as we bring them up and work through our publicists, those things are all being, shared and multiplied. And as Adam says, boosting each other's ideas in a way that that benefits us all. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of you said launch, but a lot of you are also saying that you're meeting great people there, regardless of whether it's, just people that you're going to be talking to, writers or readers. And I mean, every connection is definitely worth it, for sure, whether it's online or whether it's in person. And that's, I think it's one of the benefits almost of being indie, because you get to talk to people a little bit more one-on-one. I mean, imagine being, traditionally published author, which, I mean, nobody's going to balk at having like tons of books out there selling, but, I don't think they get to talk to their audience quite as much. I don't think they get to really relate one-on-one to readers quite as much as we do. And to me, that's kind of an exciting idea, to go to a launch and meet these people and be like, oh, I get to actually talk to you.
So just to be clear, though, traditionally published authors have publicists as well.
Right.
And in fact, some of them are with Creative Edge. So, yeah, exactly. And so there are anymore, even the large publishers don't do much to help you with your marketing. You're doing it on your own. You're spending your own dime. You're investing your own dime to try to make it work for the most part. And so you do still need that. Whether you choose to do, as you said, though, some traditionally published authors have a broader reach and might not be meeting their local community as much. But yeah, they still have to do it themselves.
Yeah, and I would add on to that, I'm going to avoid all the name dropping. I mean, one of the other Creative Edge clients is with a top tier publisher, well known. And the publicists at the publisher were blown away by what Mickey was able to do. Because at the end of the day, surviving as an author in today's space, when you think about the business elements, whether you're indie or whether you're traditional, you cannot escape being involved in the marketing. Now, from a publisher's point of view, from everything that I've heard from every friend and whatnot, it's all about the 3-month push. And then that's pretty much it. But what about after that, right? Or what about making sure that that is not a 3 month, that is part of a 6 month, almost catapulting to get you to the point where you can start talking about either something new or to put you on a different sphere. And that, I think, is really where the difference is between if you rely solely on the publisher, then it is on how do they approach publicity? How do they view you, which is just one of many, right? And in terms of the product, right? Maybe they've got another 3 fantasy books that are similar enough, and they're going to put their money really on the first one's going to get 3 shares of it, and the second guy's going to get 2, and you're going to get 1 share of push, right? This is about it being focused on you as a brand, and that's where it's different, right? Regardless of who's publishing your books, maybe you've got 2 indie books and 2 from various other publishers. That doesn't matter in this game. Really, this is about managing your brand and your overall success, and whoever is collecting the money before they send it to you almost doesn't matter. Almost.
And having a freelance publicist also, Mickey doesn't just push your book, he pushes you. So Adam is like this marketing whiz, and he's a speaker, and he gives these great presentations and, about the business and about writing. And so, he doesn't have to have a new book out to be able to do those things. So Mickey can still do things for him around that. And I mean, I work in a bookstore and I run events, so I want to share that knowledge with people. So I can do interviews and things around that.
Totally. Yeah, I'm glad you guys brought that up. Those are great points. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much to our panelists for being here. This was an awesome discussion. I learned so much. I learned a lot about Creative Edge, which I already knew a certain amount about, but I actually didn't know a lot of the things that you're saying, and a ton about just event planning and looking for a publicist. That is so useful, and I know that a lot of people, regardless of traditional or indie published, now I know, are going to find useful. So I really appreciate all the great insights that you guys provided. So I would love for each of you to tell us where we can find you online, your website, any social media that you guys have. So let's start back in the beginning with Adam.
Okay. You can find me on Facebook as Adam Drees Author, on Instagram and Twitter as Adam Drees. Drees is spelled D-R-E-E-C-E. And you can find me at adamdrees.com. My books are available at Amazon, Kobo, Smashwords, Indigo, Barnes & Noble. If you can think of somewhere, they're probably there.
Great. Go ahead, Gary.
Okay. Gee, I feel so inferior now. Mostly you'll find my books on Love Cake.
Gary brings up cake a lot, which is awesome.
So do I.
Purple icing.
For a good
Yes.
reason.
Yes.
Yeah, mostly I'm available on Amazon. Also available at select stores within Calgary, but this will be changing. And yeah, stay tuned. Things will be more spread about soon.
Great. That's great news. Thanks, Gary. All right, go ahead, Anna.
Well, my website is agkirkham, romancebyagkirkham.com. There are links to my book there through all of Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all those wonderful places, Indigo, and through my publicist, which is Dorrance Publishing. And you can get me on Facebook through A.G. Kirkham, the author. And yeah, just if not, you can always send me an email and I'll tell you where to find them.
Great. Thank you so much. And next is Sarah.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Where to find you?
Where can we find you?
And what your favorite cake is.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
You like cake?
Oh, where to find me? Okay. My website, sarahljohnson.com. That has all the links to my social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter at Leadlined Alias. My books are at all the places that Adam said. Pretty much just Google Suicide Stitch and you'll be able to find it.
Great, thank you. And finally, excuse me, oh my God, Susie. I wanted to say Sarah again. Susie, go ahead.
I'll take Sarah. I'll be Sarah. Okay, so Susie Vidori, and I'm pulling it up because my last name is hard to spell, Vadori. But once you know that, I'm actually the only Susie Vidori out there. So it's actually been very good because I can tell that to teens and readers, and they can find me really easily. I am very active on social media. If you want to find out about writing, you can follow me on Twitter or Facebook. If you would like Instagram, Bookstagram, photos of books with flowers, then you can follow me on Instagram because that's a thing, right? That's like a thing in young adults. And so anybody on here, and you guys are all laughing because you probably follow me on Instagram, go, why are there all these books with flowers? But that's what's done in the genre, and it's a lot of fun to interact with readers that way. And they send in photos of your book as well. So that's really fun. And my website is susievidori.wordpress.com. And you can buy my book just about anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Chapters here in Canada, anywhere you like.
Great. Thank you so much to all of you, all of our panelists. Thank you so much to everyone who showed up, who asked questions, everyone in the chat. You guys were really active. It was awesome to see all of your comments. Thank you so much to Creative Edge for sponsoring this episode. That was very generous of you. It was awesome to have your authors here and to learn more about you. Check them out in the description box below. I do have Mickey's contact information there. He is, as I'm sure you've gathered already, really, really friendly, super easy to talk to, and he responds very quickly. So don't be shy. Go ahead and email him, and he will respond quickly. Our next panel is going to be on July 27th. And once again, thank you so much for coming, and we will see you next time.